Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm loving that thumbnail. Literally looking such a cool person. I feel like it's always good to connect to your inner, self-esteem. So there we go, try and be a bit too cool for school, it's a bit fun. So, connecting to my inner goat spirit animal. Okay, if you have not clicked off by that word intro, then good for you. So I want to do a video on basically my honest thoughts about job prospects and general wants from life and particularly career, and how when you're younger, if you have childhood trauma, you can kind of have this sort of muted and also adapted view towards what you're capable of doing, what you actually want to do. Because like, for example, when you're in school as a child, you have to be in school, you have to sort of endure school, and like it's ups and its downs and its sort of conformity, if you like. You have to kind of be there for the people that like obviously went. I know not every single person went to mainstream school, but for those people that were institutionalized in some ways in terms of school, any sort of place that you might have gone to, even if it's like a skills training academy or something like that, you are conditioned to be sort of a statistic in some way and sort of repress your, obviously we are children. I do think it's very clever how life works and how different stages of your life, obviously when you're a child you can't logistically make decisions for yourself. So I'm not saying the school system is bad, that is not what I'm saying, but I feel like as a child you do instinctually, because of being in an institution, have to repress certain sides of yourself that you can't explore because you are, doing mainstream work. And at the end of the day, childhood trauma is apparently neurological dysfunction that I heard it described as, if you are not fed food as a child, you will have a level of malnourishment from a that level. But as the same goes for emotional feeding and emotional exercise as a child and stuff. So if you're neglected for that level, again, I always like to preface not placing blame, but if you are neglected or abused or whatever in that way, you will be malnourished on an emotional level, if that makes sense, and on a neurological level. So you can have a lot of fear and resentment carried around from childhood into adulthood, and that, as is quite obvious, will leak out into other areas of life, be that work, be that friendships, and just the level of dysregulation that comes with that, and how you can then be dysregulated in work. It can make work environments difficult if you are dysregulated, but also the choices made in relationships as well and work can be questionable because of the fear and resentment that is present, and like the dysregulation that comes from like childhood trauma. And you can have what like someone describes being a bit of a feral child syndrome, being like sort of like acting out and being like, I don't give a fuck, like I'm gonna do whatever I want kind of attitude. And I do think sometimes for me, I think I tried to go down that route a bit earlier, but then I got mental health problems that kind of slowed down my progression of that, and I had to chill out for my own mental self. But I think you do have to on some level go down these paths to get to that feral child syndrome. For some people, I'm not judging here, and not everyone maybe will go that route, and some people I've heard that have childhood neglect and abuse will go the complete opposite direction and be like this cookie cutter lifestyle. It works for them, and that's what works for them and makes them feel good about themselves. But yeah, it doesn't always go one way. Like there's a very diverse range of ways that it can affect you. So God doesn't let us get into things that harm us long term, and doesn't reward us for does not reward us for doing things that ignore our inner self. So basically, if we're doing things that are, negative, that will have a bad effect on us and are not meant for us and are not meant for our life path. For example, say if you're conditioned to be a certain way, for example, if you are conditioned to repress your inner instincts to be conformed to a statistic, for example, in school or in whatever environment that was put to you, and you are kind of then looking instinctually from an immune level, even an immune system level. I like to look at it as, this is why it's never your fault if you lean a certain way. It's actually programmed into you, even on an immune system level, that you kind of gravitate towards situations that you're programmed towards. So it's not like you can just flick out of it. This is why people have talked about this for ages in depression, that it's not as easy. You can't obviously click out of it. I don't have much experience with depression apart from one really serious bout when I was taking Roactine, but let's not digress into that. I'm not a naturally depressive person, I'm more on the anxious side, but you can have both. But if you're programmed on an immune level towards doing something, this is why mental illness can be quite dangerous, or can be so dangerous, because your immune system's programmed to be that way. But then obviously the idea of illness is that it's an illness and you can recover from it. But in terms of childhood dysregulation and sort of, you know, going towards a certain thing and, you know, having an instinct to, as I say, do all those things I was talking about, it can be programmed in an immune level that is sort of, you know, dysfunctional for you, and it isn't your fault anyway, because usually these things have been programmed in childhood, as I always like to remind. But it's usually like, it's an immune level response to trauma rather than an active mental choice. Even though you can override those choices, there are times where you work on a 95% subconscious level, so your subconscious mind will override your conscious mind at times on situations that you're not necessarily trying to prioritise, if that makes sense. You can't prioritise every single decision you make, because otherwise that's not how we're designed to work. So apparently finding wind in your sails, in terms of this video I was watching was talking about getting into alignment basically, and I've spoke about this a little bit in the past, but just trying new things if something doesn't work out for you, like getting into alignment with life, which is one standpoint, and kind of learning to go with life and find the fruit in different areas of life. And by that I just mean like the, you know, where it's supposed to be, where the good fruit is, get away from the bad fruit, and kind of discern what is not right and not in your life path and not for you to worry about, and not watering the dead plants and stuff like that, analogy, if that makes sense. And just sort of, you know, planting new seeds when needed, and, you know, allowing the harvest of life to, I mean, God, we are the garden and God is the harvester, and we are the clay and God is the potter. But it's like, if you have like not, you know, let's not get all biblical, but trying new things, and if like something's run its course, to kind of accept that. And I've definitely had that in friendships recently, and I did a video on how to recover from damaging relationships. Not to say that every relationship that you have that ends is negative, but when you do have that, I've done a video on that. So yeah, I think it's helpful to write down a list of goals, which I've done, which include things like travel for me. I haven't really fully done that. And I think I did like goals to do with relationships. This is an activity that you can do as well if you want to. I did goals around travel, relationships, personal growth so far. But then also I wrote down the type of job I want, and then in terms of like, I just put a part-time job for some extra income, and then I just put things I want from a job and things I don't want from a job. So for example, those things for me were things I want from a job: free time outside of the job, extra money, some appropriate like social interaction is fine, like as long as it's not like overstepping boundaries of like toxicity in the workplace, because I hate that. And you can't always control it, but I think I'm at the level where like you just have to kind of go with your instinct. Like last time I was in a toxic position in a job, which doesn't happen very often, but I had to literally leave partially because of the toxicity in the workplace. It was pretty bad. So yeah, and then I was like, it kind of went on to like using, you can think about the type of traits you want to inject into that job, in terms of like what traits you have that you might want to utilise. Because I think about, even though I tried to do my store, which may or may not continue, I went to a couple of craft fairs. I might do a separate video about this, but it basically wasn't fruitful in that I wasn't really using my nature in terms of the situation I was in. I wasn't maybe passionate about certain sides of it. I would like to do a whole other video about that. So I'm going to do that. But yeah, basically, yeah, you can think about that in terms of I would like to put my empathy hopefully towards a situation, or my friendly nature towards a situation. And then things I don't want: toxicity, feeling bored, feeling dread, feeling micromanaged, feeling hard worked or overworked. So yeah, those are my things, and just it helps you to also just allow yourself to open like a flower in terms of relationship, in terms of career as well. So I've done a lot of work on myself in terms of relationships and healing from relationships recently, but the same goes for career and opening up to different sides of yourself that will emerge when allowed to, because the fact is, as a child, you're not allowed to open up to situations that you don't have the capacity or the tools to actually move into. I was always quite lucky that I was actually encouraged, or I encouraged, yeah, I would say encouraged either myself, or I was encouraged partially by a family, that I kind of moved into things like music. I like did my own little business when I was 11. Like I wrote like a nutrition book when I was like 13. Like there was things I did outside of school that were passions for me, that kind of, you know, were not to do with the schoolwork, as well as sort of having friendships and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope this was interesting for you, and that was my take. So thanks for listening. Bye.